Thumbelina. Once upon a time, there was a woman who wanted a child. Since these were magical times, she went to a fairy and asked if her wish would be granted. "Oh, yes," said the fairy. "Here is barley corn. Put it in the flower pot." "Oh, thank you," said the woman. She planted it, and immediately a large, handsome flower grew up. "It is a beautiful flower," said the woman, and she kissed the leaves. When she did so, the flower opened, and within the flower perched a tiny maiden. She was scarcely as long as a thumb, and the woman gave her the name of Thumbelina. One night, while Thumbelina lay in her pretty bed, a large, slimy toad leaped right upon the table where Thumbelina lay sleeping. "What a pretty wife she would make for my son," said the toad, and she took the walnut shell bed in which little Thumbelina lay asleep. The toad's son was even uglier than her mother. And when he saw the pretty little maiden in her walnut shell bed, he could only croak happily. They placed the bed in a stream where Thumbelina couldn't escape. Thumbelina woke the next morning and began to cry when she found out where she was. She could not see anything but water on every side and had no way of reaching land. The toad swam out with her ugly son. "Here is my son. He will be your husband," the toad croaked. Thumbelina cried because she could not bear to think of having her ugly son for a husband. The little fishes had seen the toad and had heard what she had said, so they lifted their heads above the water to look at the little maiden. As soon as they caught sight of her, they saw she was very pretty. It made them very sorry to think that she must go and live with the ugly toads. So they gnawed away at the root of the leaf where Thumbelina was sitting. When they had finished, the leaf floated down the stream. A large beetle flew by. He grabbed her and flew with her into a tree. Oh, how frightened little Thumbelina felt. He gave her some honey to eat and told her she was very pretty. But all of the other beetles turned up and said, "She only has 2 legs. How ugly that looks." So the beetle believed the others, and she had nothing more to do with her. He told her she might go where she liked. Poor Thumbelina had lived alone in the forest. She went looking for shelter and found the door of a field mouse. Poor little Thumbelina stood before the door and asked for help. "You poor little creature," said the field mouse, who was really a good, kind field mouse. "Come into my warm room and dine with me." My neighbor pays me a visit once a week. He is very rich. If you could only have him for a husband, you would be well provided for indeed. But he is blind, so you must tell him a pretty story. But Thumbelina did not feel at all interested in this neighbor, for he was a mole. But the mole fell in love with her. He invited Thumbelina and the field mouse to visit him. The mole had dug a long passage which had led from the dwelling of the field mouse to his home. He warned them not to be alarmed at the sight of the dead bird in the passage. When Thumbelina saw the bird, she felt very sad. She swooped down and kissed the closed eyelids. That night, Thumbelina got out of bed and wove a large quilt of hay. Then she carried it to the dead bird and spread it over him. She laid her head on the bird's breast and was alarmed to hear that the bird's heart was beating. He was not really dead, only numb with the cold. The bird was a great deal larger than herself, but she took courage and laid the blanket more thickly over the poor swallow. He was alive, but very weak. "Oh, thank you, pretty little maiden," said the sick swallow. "I shall soon regain my strength and be able to fly again in the warm sunshine." The whole winter Thumbelina nursed him. Very soon the sun warmed the earth. Then the swallow said farewell to Thumbelina. "Goodbye," said the swallow and flew away. "You are going to be married, Thumbelina," said the field mouse. "My neighbor has asked for you." Thumbelina said she would not marry the mole. "Nonsense," said the field mouse. So the wedding day was set, and the poor child was very unhappy. "Farewell, bright sun," she cried. Tweet, tweet, sounded over her head suddenly. She looked up, and there was the swallow. She told him that she did not want to marry the ugly mole, to live beneath the earth and never see the bright sun again. "Cold winter is coming," said the swallow, "and I am going to fly away into the warmer countries. Will you go with me?" "Oh, yes, I will go with you," she said, and she seated herself on the bird's back. At last, they came to a palace of dazzling white marble. "This is my house," said the swallow. "Choose one of the lovely flowers, and I will put it upon you." "Oh, that will be delightful," she said. A large marble pillar lay on the ground, broken into pieces. Between them grew the most magnificent white flowers. How surprised she was to see in the middle of the flower a tiny man, as transparent as glass. He was not much larger than Thumbelina herself. He was the angel of the flower. When he saw Thumbelina, he was delighted and thought her to be the prettiest little maiden he had ever seen. He asked her if she would be his wife and queen of all the flowers, and Thumbelina happily agreed. And there, Thumbelina lived happily ever after.